Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to look at Horus Heresy Age of Darkness. So Age of Darkness is the second edition of the Horus Heresy rule set. It's not super melodramatic. I like it. It's Horus Heresy 2.0, second edition. It's great. It's good fun. So the way these work, 5 things I like, or the 5 things either I like or people like, or that sort of thing. 3 things either I dislike, people dislike, can be seen as negative, could be an issue, and 1 thing that makes it unique. So let's get started with number 1. It's back to the old school with templates and initiative. I don't play normal 40k these days. I haven't played 40k for a long time. Well, for a while anyway. And having templates and initiative is great. It means that, I'm not like, oh, well, let's pick this combat first and then we'll pick this one second. And I charged here, so I get to go first for some reason. It's back to good old 5th edition where I came into the game, which is still the best edition because it's the first one I played and therefore it's the best. Where you've got initiative and your weapon skill is great in this. The way weapon skill interacts with each other. Where having a higher weapon skill really does just mean you slaughter your lessers. It's great. I like the templates. I'm a huge fan of templates in 40k. Less so in bolt action. I don't like them in bolt action because I don't think they work very well. But yeah, templates in this are awesome. Nothing better than putting down a whole bunch of flamer templates because I've got a unit of 10 marines with flamers and just watching someone else's force disintegrate. It's great. Number 2, the dreadnoughts are now basically big monstrous creatures, and the elite units have got a lot tougher. So in the last edition, stuff like Terminators, which are guys in massive chunky armor, only had 1 wound. So you get a lucky bolter shot, you roll a 1 and your armor saved, and then you're dead. And that's not really great on something you paid 50 points for. Anyway, now they've got 2 wounds. And most of your elite units for your forces have 2 wounds, which is great, which is really good. It helps to just keep them alive. The point of taking elite cool stuff is to see it on the table being elite and cool. As far as I'm concerned anyway. Also, it kills things and it's fun to play with. But it's not fun to see your dreadnoughts get wiped out because sheer weight of fire just makes you roll enough 1s to, 5 1s and you've lost a unit. So the buffing of the elites, dreadnoughts getting monstrous creature is amazing. Normally you'd see behind me on that shelf there my Iron Warriors, but I'm packing up at the moment because I'm sort of moving within the complex here. So they're not there at the moment, but I've got quite a lot of dreadnoughts for my Iron Warriors, which is great because they get a lot better in this edition. Instead of being walkers, they're now basically just bigger, tougher units. Toughness 7 normally, a whole bunch of wounds, good weapon skill with an armor save and an invulnerable save, which means you're not going to get one shot by a las cannon anymore. One of the problems you used to have with one problem I have with vehicles in a lot of different systems is you can just get 1 shot. That's why I don't like vehicles in bolt action, because you get 1 shot. So they've taken that away from dreadnoughts. Dreadnoughts are now much tougher. And as somebody who really likes dreadnoughts, that's a really good plus. And yeah, it's great. The elites have got more elite. The dreadnoughts have been made to feel more like they do in the fluff. And the game has overall really had a bit of a balance when it comes to unit profiles. And I think that's been a big plus. Number 3, your legions, which are the main force you're playing with, the 18 legions and the 9 traitor and the 9 loyalist. They all use a generic list, but they've still varied enough that you know you're playing a different legion. Especially when you get to things like the Thousand Suns, who are your space wizards, who have basically everyone having psychic powers, which we'll get to later. Or the Iron Warriors, which I play, where you can basically give all of your units for 2 points pinning, which is great. But it also means that you're quite familiar with everything that's on the table. Your enemy's tactical squad is the same as yours, essentially. Your enemy's Terminators are the same as your Terminators. Their Walkers are the same as your Walkers. Their Dreadnoughts are the same as your Dreadnoughts. Vehicles are all similar. It's all sort of generic enough with a bunch of extra stuff put on the outside. And then a few things tweaked, like Blood Angels get bonuses on the charge. Night Lords, which is my favourite legion, get to do extra damage if they outnumber the enemy, that sort of thing. So it's not like you're playing 18 different factions with different lists with different units that are all totally different from one another, and you're trying to get your head around what everybody's doing. It's all generic enough that you understand what everything is with cool things added into it, which is great. Number 4, they've simplified the psychic powers. One problem I've always had with 40k is the psychic phase or the psychic powers. The whole generating dice and then having a phase for psychic powers, and then you use them and then you resist them. But how do you resist them? Well, you generate your own dice, and it just gets chaotic. Now they're very simple. They're basically, some of them are just shooting attacks that you take instead of a shooting attack. Some of them are basically just, I pick a unit in my movement phase, and I'll pick one of your units, and I'll do a psychic power. They're integrated into the game. They flow. They don't sort of make you go, well, that's kind of ridiculous. They're all very, very good. The psychic phase has been gotten rid of, so you don't need to worry about it because it doesn't exist. The idea that you would spend your turn like generating and then rolling a dice for each of your units. Okay, well, I'm especially playing Thousand Suns. Well, I've got 7 units. I need to roll a 6 on a bunch of dice. Or how many have I got? So I get a pool over here, and then I pick some of the pool dice up and roll them, and then, oh no, what's happened? It's just much easier to do it the way it is now, where it's all integrated. And I'd like to see other systems that use Magic use this system, where you integrate the Magic into the game, rather than having to sort of tear it out, set up its own phase, and then stick things around it. I think it is a lot less clunky this way. Number 5, a lot of your AP3 is now gone. And what that means is you have a 3+ save on your basic Marine troops. Like these, which I've painted up. 3+ save, and AP3 means that anything with a 3+ save or worse gets ignored. So AP3 is a big problem if you're playing Marines against Marines, because it means you don't get a save against it. So a lot of that's been done away with in favor of this breaching rule. I like the breaching rule. It's basically if you roll over a certain amount to wound, it ignores the armor save. Otherwise, you take it on AP4, which doesn't affect a 3+ armor save. So I'm thinking of the plasma guns in particular, who breach on a 4+. So you'll mostly be going straight through armor, but sometimes you won't. I like the breaching idea better than integrating the way it's done in 40k now, with the whole sort of reducing the armor roll. I'm not a fan of reducing the armor roll. It's very old school Warhammer Fantasy, which I think works in that system. Probably doesn't work in sort of 40k sci-fi. If something's getting through power armor, it's getting through power armor. It doesn't sort of reduce it. So yes, I'm a big fan of AP3 being reduced. Even things like Vindicated Cannons aren't AP3 anymore. I think they used to be AP2 or even AP1. So a lot of the big pie plates have been shrunk down to small pie plates. Melee weapons have gotten a lot better. I'll give it that much. Power Mauls are now one of the best things in the game after being trash since they were first introduced in 6th edition, normal 40k. AP4 with +2 strength, not really that great, but they're really good now. Thunderhammers are fantastic. The rebalancing of the way weapons are worked has really been fantastic. You don't lose whole units on turn 1. The joke that always went around when I was 10 years ago now was that there was a real story. There's a guy who went to a tournament, took Blood Angels in I think 40k 6th or maybe 7th edition, and basically he lost the first turn. Like, he didn't win the roll to go first, and he shook his opponent's hand and said, oh, well, thanks, I need to go first, otherwise I lose. Because that's what the game was like back then. That was the meta. It was just an overwhelming first strike, destroy everything the opponent has, and then win the game. But that's not going to happen in 40k, in Horus Heresy. It really is a lot more balanced. It's a lot more attrition. You feel a lot more attrition when you're playing it. I can remember a game I had where it was basically just a bunch of bolt guns firing back at one another and just trying to wear the enemy down while you got an elite unit in with power weapons to finish them off. Really, really fun. And a lot more fun than just taking a unit off the table because your opponent bought a wonder weapon. So 3 things that are a bit not the greatest. The first is it's kind of hard to get the miniatures, and they can be very expensive. Games Workshop, for some bizarre reason, has just made it their goal in life to not stock Horus Heresy miniatures, even though they're in plastic now. So, I want to get in I want to get some of those some of those Iron Warriors in the Mark III, well, you can't, because the Mark III is sold out basically on your continent, or maybe even your hemisphere. You want to get some of those, you can use the normal rhinos. I use the normal rhinos, but maybe you want the Demios pattern plastic rhino that Games Workshop just brought out. They're also sold out. Maybe you want the starter set. Well, you can't buy the starter set. Well, it's got the rulebook in it. Well, you can't buy the rulebook. It could be a bit of a pain. It could also be very expensive because a lot of the stuff you'll need is resin. Once you get into the more specific things, and if you want to do the Legion upgrades. I haven't done Legion upgrades on my stuff because I didn't really think it was super necessary. If you get the paint scheme down, you don't really need it. But some Legions look really good with the upgrades. If I was going to do World Eaters or Night Lords, I would definitely use the upgrades. But for Iron Warriors, bit of hazard striping is more than enough for me. But yeah, it can be expensive unless you use our friends in China, which I'm not going to say anything about. Or if you're like me and you have a 3D printer and you can print up a 4,000 point Custodes army for like $60 worth of resin. Which is good. And I look forward to using those to completely destroy all of my friends. So yeah, it can be very expensive, and it can also be annoying to get stuff in stock. It's more of a passion project than a main game, if I was going to say anything about that. Number 2, and I actually think this is a really good thing, but a lot of people don't, and that it's not at all really like 40k. Modern 40k, which I think is good because I don't like modern 40k. But if you want 40k players to play Horus Heresy, it's a bit of a learning curve in there. You back to ballistic skills, so there's no more to hit rolls. So in 40k, you're like, oh, I hit on a 3. I said, no, well, your ballistic skill 4. And the way you work out your hit is you take your ballistic skill away from 7, and that's what you hit on. Which lets you do things like have ballistic skill 8, where you hit on a 4 with a 2+. You hit on a 2 with a 4+ reroll. Anyway, that's unimportant. There's a bit of a curve. You've got templates. How the templates work? Well, it works like this. I don't have multiple damage doing weapons. What's this instant death thing? I'm not sure if they had that in 40k, but whatever. There's all these different sort of rules that are very natural to someone like me who played a long time ago and has been playing for a while. But if you're just getting into 40k, it's a bit of a hurdle. It is learning a new game. I'm sorry, if you're just getting into 30k, it is learning a new game. It's not 40k with a different skin. And that can be a bit of a turn off to some people. Number 3, you really got to get a good group of friends to play this game because it costs a lot of money and it's sort of a bit specialized. But Death Star units can be a bit of a problem. There is units that some factions can take, which you will never be able to kill and will kill everything you have. And you can win scenario games based on that, but sometimes you just want to kill stuff. You just want to have one of those kill games. And yeah, a bunch of salamanders running around in Terminator armor with thunder hammers and storm shields is going to wreck your day. 3+ vulnerable saves. Means no matter what AP you throw at them, they're always saving on a 3. Multiple wounds. Doing 3 wounds per hit with their thunder hammers, they're going to destroy you. That can be a real pain. Maybe limit the amount of those you can take or something like that. So you have to sort of get a good group together who can agree on certain things that they're going to take and not going to take. Primarchs is a good example. Primarchs are the leaders of the legions and they're very powerful. And you generally don't want to take Primarchs in every single game because it's just going to be, oh, well, he's taking the Primarch again. I guess I better either focus all my fire on it or completely ignore it. I personally find it more fun to put armies against one another rather than armies against characters. That's sort of just my opinion. So yes, sometimes big, tough units can be a problem, and that sort of requires a bit of out of the book friendly agreements to sort of build armies a certain way. So what makes it special? Is it the 60 plus novels written about the Horus Heresy? Is it the 40k? No. The novels are fantastic. You should definitely read them. But the game, I think, is revolutionary for a Games Workshop game in that it's got reactions. These are things where if somebody moves close to you in the movement phase, you can take a move yourself and sort of get out or get closer. If somebody shoots at you, you can shoot back, or you can get a bit of cover. If somebody charges you, you can brace and take their charge bonuses away, or you can do other things. You can do Overwatch instead. And Legions have their own specific reactions, which are quite cool. I like that. I think that's really fun. A lot of people have said for a long, long time that 40k is very much an I go, you go game. And I think these reactions really help you keep you on your toes a little bit. I know the first game I had was against a friend of mine who had a Leviathan Dreadnought, which is a big, shooty, tough, armored thing. And it's like, well, I'm going to shoot at it. And it's like, well, every time I shoot at it, it shoots back at me. Or, the first time I shoot it in my face, it takes another shot at me. And it's like, okay, how do I deal with the big shooty thing if I can't shoot at it, Or every time I shoot at it, I know it's going to shoot back. How do I deal with this thing? And, I'm going to charge this unit. And then it's like, well, they're bracing, so I don't get my charge bonuses. Like, ooh, how do I set up a bunch of charges at once? Because he can only react to one of them. How do I do that? And you really start playing a more tactical game. I think the reactions are really fun. And at first I was a bit skeptical of them, but they really flow quite smoothly. And the way we did it was we had poker chips, and you just sort of had movement, shooting, fight written on the poker chips, and you could see if the other person used them or not, and you could see what units reacted. So that was Horus Heresy, The Age of Darkness, the Horus Heresy 2nd edition. I had great fun with it. I look forward to painting up these Custodies. Stay tuned, I'll put that up on Beasts of War on tabletop at some point. So yeah, if you enjoy Age of Darkness, put a comment down below. Let me know if you would like me to review any other games. Thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful day.